Okay, for those of you that's been wondering why I haven't been posting videos lately, well, the biggest reason is my camera gave up the ghost, stopped working. The camera I'm on here now is my Logitech C910, it sits on top of my computer monitor. I have got that Blackmagic Pocket 4K, but basically it's for my studio work. I don't get it out doing, jobs outside really because, it doesn't have autofocus on and so forth. And I've got the camera that's on my phone, which brings me to the second part of this. The other thing that's been holding me up on making videos is the fact that I found a 12 by 14 building that I ended up having to completely tear down and rebuild. All right, this is the building, folks. This video will have several times where I walk around it like this, showing you, parts where I've taken it apart and where I put it back together. Now, there's a lot of stuff missing, me building the walls and so on and so forth. There again, I walked around it with my cell phone, and it was basically just to show progression levels. It was never meant to be a video to put on YouTube, so it doesn't really show me building anything. But at the end of this video, I'm going to go through a lot of stuff that you won't see. So if you want to know what makes this building really solid, wait to the end of this video. It was a good building to start with. It had 16-inch centers on the floor, on the walls, and the roof. The floor was 2x8s, the walls was 2x4s, and the roof was 2x6s, which was under the bottom. But it had no center support, which is why I couldn't get anybody to help me move it, because it had no runners for them to load it up. Even though I told, there was one guy, the only guy I could actually get to really talk to me about moving the building. Here's another weak point in it. You'll notice in the top it's got little spacers where they didn't have the boards long enough. I've seen people actually build buildings like this, but I didn't like it. And some of the spacers had big old gaps where they didn't cut the boards long enough. And the center board, although it don't look like it right here, was all warped up like this. The main support down the middle, when I took it apart, it was all warped up. Oddly enough, after I took it out, it straightened back up instead of going the other way. A lot of this is I'm going to show you the bird mess, which is why I think they actually sold this thing or got rid of it.
Trying to get that view.
It has vinyl siding, but right at the very edge is a really thin plastic held on by nails that the paint's already come off and they're rusting and stuff. And they didn't really build much of what they call a bird box, although it was full of birds, which is what I'm getting to now. He said his wife didn't want to build it anymore. She just wanted to get rid of it, get it out of her sight. And I think what's happened is the birds was getting to them little lifts on the roof on the side.
Well, that's going to be fun putting back together.
Where the top was coming down. And they'd get right through there, and they were making bird nests all up inside the thing. And of course, they were right in here. These little ridges where the roof come to the edge. It's supposed to have foam in it, which some of it did, but some of it didn't, where they knocked them out or they fell out or whatever. The birds were getting in there, and they were pooping all over the thing. And I'm sure that's what she didn't like about it. Now, this right here. This shows you how thin it is. Look at where they come together with the plastic on the side. That was some bad
That was done bad right there.
Well, I even say it. Now this is basically for a reference for me, what this video was. And it had leaks. It had leaks in the roof at one time. It had leaks around this door. And I'll show you the leaks in a minute.
Okay, back to
but it was $80, and it had 3/4 inch.
That was done bad right there.
It was worth it just for the wood out of it.
That's full of a bird nest up inside.
And that's where
you can see it coming out.
Nest right there. I already knew it had bird issues because I could see the poop inside. But then when I seen that coming out this vent over here, I knew it had bird nests in it. I
think they've had trouble with a few birds in this thing, as a matter of fact.
Yeah.
Of course, the overlapping corner.
It's good to do this if you're ever working on something, if you can get a log of what's going on. Now That door right there is, I think it was $505 when I looked it up. I looked it up after I got in the building.
Alrighty.
See this, that roof stuff they had was on this little, whatever you want to call it, 1/2 inch by 3 inch wood. It's really flimsy wood, but you know, it had a double layer up here and it had that super thin layer. And you can see the bird nests all around this area. Now, all this wood was taken off, and that's another thing about taking it apart that I wasn't so worried about it was I took it and I cleaned it up. But I didn't, you know, do it while it was dry or anything. I took and wet it down and used a mop, threw the mop away after the fact, but used a mop to mop all the stuff off of it. But you'll notice the very top board here has a big old gap and stuff. And a lot of them boards they had was like that. They'd come in and out and in and out. It was a mess. And I could have just redone it all, but I tried to use everything I could that was there. I threw away a couple of these boards because they had issues, and there was one long board that ran down the side I got rid of because it was trying to break. But that was essentially it, and I used everything else, and I bought a few new boards here and there to add extra strength. And you'll notice they use the nails.
Going down.
Now this is after I got the
We
siding
got
off.
the cuts down here.
This cut at the bottom here, it's right where the wall stops at the bottom, and it meets the actual foundation area. That way the walls can be taken off separate, because this was the whole piece of OSB that went all the way down to the bottom, and because it's had extra heights then, even beyond an 8-foot building, they added onto the top of it. Well, I cut the line at the bottom so it could be separated, and I knew there's pieces I was going to take off the bottom anyway. So I put all these markings on there just to give me an idea of what went where when I put it back together. So when you hear me talking about painting it, that's what I'm talking about.
So you got one matching there, right side, one matching there, right side, one matching.
So I put it at the seams of where they all go together where I can match them back up.
There, right side. And I'll put other matching numbers in there. That's 2 boards up top.
Now you're going to see a flaw I did earlier. I mean, in a minute.
Again, none of this stuff's been painted yet.
This board at the bottom, it don't look it, but it's not in good shape. You know, where water had ran, where they left that exposed on the sides. I think I've got a part of it, as you'll see later, where you can see how dark the 2x4 is, and the end of the plywood here was bad. When this was running behind the siding. And
There you go.
This right here at the top, the weird cuts, that's where I was on the inside with a saw cutting the nails, because the nails were just so stubborn. And the saw was running crazy on the outside. And I couldn't tell it. I thought it was, but I couldn't see it from where I was standing on the inside cutting it. But I wasn't even worried about it at that point.
So what the board's coming together looks like.
I had planned on replacing that board, so I didn't care. I ended up not replacing it.
Inside.
See how dark the wood is on the edge? That's where they was just letting weather hit it. And of course it's hitting the edge of this OSB as well. And that of course isn't good. So I fixed that. I put metal over it when I did it.
I haven't painted this side yet to show it. Will in a minute.
Again, the only foundation it's had is those 3 blocks on the edge, and of course they're on both sides. They had no foundation in the middle at all.
Will in a minute.
So that one right there is all it has. In the middle on the front, but not in the centers. There's no running boards at all. It's just the cross ones. And one of them was weak. It had a knot in 2 places on the side, and they just happened to line up with each other, and it started going down. Well, I was putting running boards under it, which you'll see later, so that was supported anyway. But I put it in the back where they squeezed it in, where they, you know, they run out of 16/16, and they had like a 20-inch gap then, so they put another one, which is the right thing to do instead of having a wider gap. It would have worked. Some people would have done it that way, but they put it in. Well, I put it in there, in that spot then. So even if I didn't have extra support, it doesn't matter. It's right beside the support. I was going to just completely replace it, and I realized I could do that and it'd be fine.
Same thing here.
And again, it's got
Of course, I
6
added
by
that
6
just to hold it
once I put
together.
it back together.
So here's how the side works. It's the side of that wall. Comes up in there, goes under that lip.
Now you'll notice I had that number at the top of that 2 by
Same
4.
thing.
I numbered them all the way down, 1, 2, 3,
All the
4,
way
and then I
through.
went on the other side and numbered A, B, C,
In
D.
here.
You don't have to do that. That's
Then you
completely
come down
unnecessary.
here.
But I was
Now,
literally
because the
going
building's a little
through
bit longer,
the
And you got-
steps here. See, it ends with 12.
these. Okay. Same thing. Now we got this door,
See the old board
which
again.
is where the 6 foot wide roll-up door was.
Now, I say I completely tore it down, and I did, but these boards right here around the door, right here, I left. Now, these boards right here, I took off, flipped them over. I was going to replace them, but again, I was trying to see about using everything I could on the building. It wasn't even about saving money. A little bit of it was, of course, but it was about showing that I could put this building back together. Because when I took it apart, it went crazy, and I figured it would. Sure enough, boards started twisting and everything else. It was a job. But it was to show that it could be done without wasting a bunch of stuff. Now, with that said, I'm going to talk about how much it costed. You know, it was an $80 bill, but it ended up costing me a lot towards the end. Still a lot cheaper than
That's right there.
buying one, but
Okay.
I'll give you the price at the end.
Of course, the other side's the same way. So I've got the numbers up there. And that's essentially it, folks. Then you've got the floor. They got a short piece here.
They're
Wide piece
staggering the
there.
floor is what I'm talking
Now, the
about.
building's 12 feet wide.
12 feet
Wide
five,
piece
14
there, short
inches,
piece there.
14 feet long.
Down here you got wide piece, short piece, and then of course, down here, you've got the ending stuff, but they've halved it. They put a little piece down here on this side, the big piece in the middle, and another little piece down here. You can see the line here.
Now, the reason they would have done that is because they wanted a full piece where the lawnmower was going to come in and not have a crack in the middle of it. I can understand why.
Okay, so here's an update on the project.
Now, this is after I've tore it down and moved it to my house. This is just going through a few things.
This is where I'm getting the foundation ready. Now, this step with the boards going around, the perimeter boards, you don't have to do that. That's just me going overboard with it, as I tend to do, because I wanted to sit it there and know exactly where the corner is by sight. And I used it to level, which I'm going to redo later, but that's what I was doing with this, but you don't have to do all that. See, I can get the corners.
That right there was the sole purpose of that one, so I could look down and literally know what's there, so it doesn't pull any trickery on me later, you could say. I would know that it literally falls right over them holes to where, you know, I don't go and get it all built up and find out, whoops, it's not quite lining up. Although math is math and you can make it work if you do the math right. I like to visually see stuff though.
And in case you're wondering about the 4x4 in the piece here, you don't need that. That's not the way, you know, it's normally done. That's just me being overkill again.
And this is why I'm really showing you.
Right here is the screws. And then this goes into the 4x4, which also has it right here. So why would I do that? Well, two reasons. I've seen old buildings that's been sitting there for, you know, half a century or something, and the nails and all start rotting out on the edge, and the board rots right on the end there, and it can come apart. Basically, the building itself is holding everything together, but that's not. That's giving up. This gives it an extra place to fall back to help support itself. Plus, when you go to put the actual blocks on it to support it, it gives it a little more surface area to hang on to.
Okay, I should point out that whenever I got this building, it was, you know, early August, you could say, right at the beginning. Well, it's like August 14th or something like that. And it was hot, took it all down, and brought her to the house, but it was going through a drought, and the ground's hard as a rock, and I wanted to know when I hit the actual hard dirt, so I wanted to wait till it rained a little bit, had time to settle down in there before I started digging the foundation holes because I wanted to know when I hit the good stuff. And it was so dry, you know, you go down half an inch and it was like hitting stone almost. So there was a big gap where I wasn't doing anything. And I had some of the wood stored under the house and on a flat surface, and even that kind of bowed and stuff. And then I had some of it stored kind of out in the weather under a little bit of, but weather could still get to it area. And, you know, that wasn't the best. So a lot of it's got stained looking and stuff, but it was all right. Remember, it wasn't raining until right there at the end. Anyway, there was a big gap. So by the time I finish this building, it's cold. Well, I just finished it like 2 weeks ago or something. Anyway, back to the video.
All right, so the foundation's pretty well ready. I got to fill in the dirt.
Now you can see the 6x6 is going down the center that it didn't have when I got it. It just had the edges, remember?
I figured I'd show you the holes before I did that. So I didn't use any pea gravel. I literally.
Now, pea gravel is just a universal term I'm using. Little rocks or little pieces that people use to put up under it, and they use that to level it and all. And that's fine. And I know other people have other reasons, and people say this and that and other. But at the end of the day, that is a hard ground right there. Even if it don't look it, that thing is hard. And I've leveled it up, and I'll scrape it with the top of the shovel when I'd get it right in the area to make sure, because I'm leveling it this way and this way. Well, that's one thing to do, but the next one over is two on beside each other. Trying to level that's hard, and then you're trying to level with the next one beside it as well. It was a job, and without cheating by using the pea gravel to keep everything level. I done it the old school way.
I got the ground flat enough to do it without that. So this whole building can be held up by the center for supports. I've got 6x6x16s on there. The outside is just extra. But I wanted it to be double supports, and that's what.
Now, I will point out something that a lot of people would consider wrong, and I thought about it before I done it. Over here in this corner, you see, I've let the block stick out a little bit, and you'll see that later on. You see behind the building, and I done that on purpose. I didn't want to be right on the edge, where it might could collapse in or something, which it really wouldn't do. People do that all the time when they're building stuff, but I'm like, well, it's a storage building. It don't really matter. So I wanted it on out there where it get a little bit better support on that. So that's why that's not going to look right to you. I knew it was doing it, but I left it that way.
You see down there.
And one more thing, these spacer boards, that's not the final boards I used.
Double block, so it can't move this way, it can't move that way easy, whereas that can tip. But I put 3 of them in, and I got to the 4th one and started doing a double. But I realized that right there would be a perfect height using those bricks. So, and it's so low, it don't have a chance to wobble anyway. I just went ahead with that. Even though I originally wanted 4 double wide foundation pieces. That'll hold good too. Now, you may wonder, why do I have it painted? Well, these are pressure treated boards, but the paint adds an extra layer of protection on it. And the reason why I went right here is because the siding is going to have to go there, which I'm going to expose some of the boards a little bit. So
your first run on siding, you got like a plastic piece that pokes down there, and there's going to be a little area under it. And that's what I'm talking about, the moisture there. It'll stop that. Now, you may have noticed that the boards that run all the way down the actual side of it are completely red from top to bottom. And the reason why I did that is because that is more critical, because that's the board that runs down, and then all your cross boards run into that. And I wanted to make sure that it didn't get a chance to rot. I mean, anything will rot enough time, but it'll take a lot longer. So I put that extra coating on it. Even though it's going to be protected by the side and everything, I still wanted it to have an extra coating. So that's why it's got on that. Now, you got to remember, there is no nails in this building. Everything is, most of it is 3-inch screws, and basically sheetrock screws. But I've got some that's 1 5/8 inches in places. That's what holds the OSB on the roof and all this kind of stuff. Now, there is some nails. I put some aluminum fascia on the sideboards on the top, and that kind of stuff. And it has some little nails in it. That's the only nails in it. and that's designed to where even if it didn't have the fascia on it, it's got a board behind it that, like old school, that's what they would have used years ago. They would have just had the board with it painted, which I painted it too before I put the fascia on it. So
I
that's
wanted some
double
extra protection there. Okay.
See, there's that board. See, they had a little bit more than 16 inches at the back for it to line up, so they throw the board in. That's why I had the X on it. That was me telling myself it was a bad board. But I was like, well, it's really not holding any weight at this point. And even if it was, it's sitting right here on trusses now that it didn't have before. So it's not under any stress like it was before. And so I just kept the board.
Here we go. So these angles, you'll notice they're across from each other.
They're across from each other because if you put them both on one side, and it got picked up or something, it might try to pull out under its own weight. Now, an eagle-eye person may notice if it's in here. I don't know,
hold
the other side.
This on actually.
They're on the same side.
This.
And I changed that after I did this video.
Is when they go to pull it, it does try to move it. It wedges it in there, kind of the same way when they cut into them and let the board sit down in it, but this is sitting on top.
See right here, you'll notice there's one right here and there's one right here on the same side. Well, I switched it around right after this video. And
of course, this is your noggins to strengthen everything. All right, here's the frame. Still got to put some dead man boards in there, put a sheetrock on or whatever on the inside, but other than that, this is it. This is the dead man I was talking about, and that's so that you can put siding on it, sheetrock in it.
And it may not have sheetrock, but just in case. Now you'll notice right here at the top, the boards aren't coming together. They were nailed straight to the end whenever they had it. But I added a whole nother 2x8 by 16 onto the building on top of the one they had, and then screwed them together. So I wanted to have even more strength. And when they done it, they went from 8-inch up to 6-inch to match the trusses, if you will, which meant the siding, when they put the siding on under the bottom there, it twisted up. Well, I had to fix that. So I put an actual piece of metal later that come out level and then came up. But I did put a spacer in between them top boards is what I'm getting at. I put a piece of wood in there and all. It's just, you don't see it here. See right here, it's not in there yet, that little piece of metal I was talking about. The spacer's in there. And you'll notice it's painted, and then I built what birdhouses myself. I just had to construct them. They weren't part of the building. It had little tiny ones.
So there's the side of my house, which it's got to be pressure washed, as well as
itself.
The building. Now, here's the building in its final state. Now, you can see the ground is frosty. It's cold. So I can't really do much with it. The blue right there is tape that's over a crack that needs to be fixed, but don't want to work on siding when it's cold.
Now you'll notice it's got a metal roof on it, but that's a used metal roof. It would have cost me more if I had purchased that metal roof. I was going to do a shingle roof, and a guy up the road said, well, I've got a metal roof. We had a hailstorm go through, I don't know, 15 years ago or something. And my house was like 3 years old or 5 years old at the time, I forget. Anyway, his house was brand new when it hit. And they replaced it. He got to keep all the metal. They didn't want anything to do with it. I said, oh, you can have it if you want. I don't care. Well, he asked me if I wanted it, so I went and got some of it. But that meant they already had the holes in it for the screws, so I had to try to line it up with that. And you'll notice how high it is here. Because remember, it's got 6-inch boards anyway. Then I put OSB on top of that. And I had tar paper down to protect it because it was trying to rain. Plus, I was also thinking about putting, asphalt shingles on it at the time. So I actually left that on there. And then you run boards across long ways from front to back. And normally you'd put 2x4s. And most people that do that don't have the OSB on there. They just have the 2x4s, or that thin stuff you've seen before. Anyway, I did not trust going into OSB. Although you're supposed to be able to, I didn't trust going into OSB with the screws to hold that tin on. So I opted to put the 2x4s. Or when I went to get them, the 2x6s was actually a couple of cents cheaper. And I asked the people why it was that way, and they said, well, it's supply and demand. Right now, there's not as much demand for, anyway, regardless, I put 2x6s all the way across it. And there's one on the bottom, 2 in the middle, I believe, I can't remember. And I've got 2 at the top all the way down, on each side, 2 at the top. So there's a lot of wood up there. And then I, screwed into that.
It'll try to break with you.
That's why the top is so tall.
And like I say, it hasn't been pressure washed to clean it up because.
And I have never worked with metal before. I just kind of cut it and hoped. Now the right hand side, you can see the side has dents in it. That's from the hail, and this one don't have as many, and the back one I don't think it has any. And this piece right here, I cut it right at the edge, started here and come down to the, and I really should have let it overhang. Well, I corrected it by the time I got this. But that was my first one I put on.
Well,
even though it should have been my second because it has to go over that one, it was the first one.
Again, it's cold. But this will give you an idea.
Now keep in mind, all this wood under here has been painted as if it was exposed to the weather. This right here, the reason why that doesn't look the same, that was a piece of trim that I got that the guy that had the roofing metal here had. This other stuff I had to buy from Lowe's. Home Depot didn't have it, and I got it from Lowe's, and that's the only color they had, and it was metal. They had a plastic one that was white as well. Well, I think they did have a dark color, but I didn't care for it on this metal. I may be wrong. No, that was the only one they had. Yeah, that was. Now that's the only places there's screws is that, and that, of course, the metal itself, not the roof metal, that's got screws, but the other metal is held on with the fascia metal.
That it's pretty well finished.
It has nails in it. Nothing else has nails in this building.
I've got other projects I need to get on to anyway.
And again, all the fascia metal is set up to where if it came off, it still wouldn't rot because it's all painted and everything. So you'll notice this door back here, I now have metal around it. I even have metal there, although this is going to be changed. This is temporary so I can get through the winter time, and then I'm going to get an actual, footing down there that it actually needs. That right there is just a piece of metal like it's on the roof, a piece that's cut out just to protect the wood a little bit. It's not the best way to do it, but it keeps it from getting behind the siding and so on and so forth. And I got all kinds of sealant in down there and all. You'll notice I've got vents under here. I did have the full long vents, little skinny ones, but full on metal vents. I was like, no, I'll just use these. They work actually better anyway because it goes up in there where air can go from one to the next. It ain't compartment, wise. It don't just go up. It actually can breathe to each other. So it doesn't hurt to have those. And they're screwed in, 6 screws, each one. And they're good to go. Now, I don't know if you can see it here or not. Right here at the point, I built a piece of metal, just squared it off, let it go up, screwed it in, let it go down. So even though the board goes up into the air because it goes uphill, that keeps it level. There's a gap under it that you're not seeing, but it looks level from outside because it is. But the board wasn't level that it was on. So that made everything work there. It's got issues.
It's got stuff in it right now.
I'm gonna have to tinker with. Now it looks a lot better now than what it did in this video when I opened it up. But it wasn't sorted or anything yet.
Thing here. We'll try to. Okay. There it is. Set this. There it is. There that is. I'll come back around here. See, like this right here. Dirty.
Well, see, that's an actual cut down here I'm pointing at.
And that was a mark. I've got some siding that I'll show you in a minute.
Those cracks in the siding, they're little chips, and they were actually lower down on it. And whenever I was taking the building apart, there's a guy right next to, has the property right next to the building, but it's not the guy I got, not the one I got the building from. And you can tell it was hit by his lawnmower. He's got a big old industrial, lawnmower. He come flying by there, and I'll say, that's where them chips come from. It was throwing stuff at the building as he was mowing. And it happened before I was there, but I'm saying that's pretty much has to be where they came from, is it being hit by the mower junk. And that's normal. Siding has that happen. That's one of the weak things about having siding. And it had one on this side that was right at the bottom, and it probably got hit by a mower or weed eater or something too. That's the disadvantage of siding. Well, when I put them back on, I put them on different spots. But I wanted them up higher because I knew I was going to change them out later. But when I went trying to find this siding, I found some up in Kentucky. And you got to buy a whole box. It comes in a box of 24, but you got to get at least 12. And they didn't even have any, because I happened to be doing a job a few weeks later and was up in Kentucky and went by there. They didn't have that color or anything, which is where this other color come from. But I was in a smaller vehicle, and I ended up having to cut it in half because it's 12 feet long, 12 feet 6 inches, and I had to cut it in half to fit it in the vehicle. So you'll see it here in a second. And I plan on using that to patch up somewhere with that, and then use the pieces I took off, the good parts, to fix these holes.
The inside.
Now you'll notice the double roof, the double main support at the top where I added on to the other one, screwed them together. You'll notice there's no gap fillers on mine. It's all screwed in, but it's tight. I put this extra board in here. I think I talked about that.
That's where they had it in their spot, and it wasn't center, so I added another one. Plus, that was basically the center of the building, so I give it double support.
By the way, when you're putting the OSB up top, you're supposed to leave a little gap. You can look up how far, about 1/8 of an inch or just under. You look it up for yourself, see what you think.
Well, this is that siding I was talking about.
That's the siding I purchased in Kentucky.
That I got. Now, it's actually a couple of shades off. See, here's the actual siding color right here.
You'll notice the texture of the wood is separate too.
See, they're a couple of shades off from each other. And these can be used as patches.
Now, them are a little over 1 foot long, but you'll hear me talk about 6 inches here in a minute.
Right there. If I wanted to, just put little 6-inch patches, I could fix all the areas that need to be fixed with just that.
You gotta remember, there's 3 actual holes in that little scratch one on the back. So that's why I'd have to have 4 of them to fix those. But I could fix the worst ones with just 2 of them and be fine.
So I have options.
That's what I meant about options.
And you'll notice that wire is going through a hole. That's the hole that I got to breathe, to let it breathe up through there. So anytime I have one of them in there.
By the way, that wire, the building's not wired. That's in case I wanted to run a wire. I went on here and ran it out through the outside.
Put a hole in it.
So that, you could have a floodlight outside. And, that stuff was going to be covered up. So I didn't want to have to take the fascia off or anything to get to it. Although there's screws, I didn't want to take the fascia off to get to the screws to be able to run that wire. So I went on here and ran it just in case in the future it ever got wired.
So you're down here too.
And that's so that, if you have a cylinder or something on, you want the heat to be able to go through there. Remember, I got the vents on the outside. But if I ever put a cylinder in there or anything, you'd want it to be able to breathe through there. So, it's unnecessary, but you don't have to have them. I just wanted extra strength.
And they all have the holes in them. Of course, they don't have them in the middle, don't need them. Those are only there to help the outside. See, I've got the screws on the edge. The screws up there on the edge of it. and it goes through to the outside. And it's to give this even more strength.
And that's 3/8 inch plywood under there, quarter inch plywood that I painted under the bottom. The way they used to do it years ago. And it's oil based paint, by the way. It's oil based paint on that and the door.
Instead of that just
Primered
sticking
and
out there and being
oil-based.
held by one board here and one board up there, I've got them in the middle, and it's to give it more strength.
And you may be wondering, okay, this siding is a one color, almond-like color, but yet up here I noticed you got white. Most of theirs was white. I had a little piece on the back that wasn't, but that's what they used. I had to buy some extra because remember I had to redesign it because my bird boxes came on in and theirs stopped right over here. And you'll notice that's that top metal piece I was talking about. It's up in there.
So there it is, folks, the complete building.
And that's it, folks. Now, I thought I had it in the video, but I did not show the where the door stops. When I took everything out, you could see the dark spots where water had ran around the corner somehow. I've got that all sealed up everywhere. It probably won't happen to me. But cost. Now, $80 for the building. But when you add in fuel to go and get it, because it was, I don't know, 30 minutes away or something. Wait a minute. A little bit more than that. But regardless, I think it's 45 minutes away. And I had to buy a couple of tools, a multi-tool and, you know, a special pry bar, which I'm going to do a video on that pry bar because that thing is, it's not a normal pry bar. It's really good. And it was a lifesaver, as the saying goes. And the wood I bought, I bought several boards and stuff. And you wouldn't think it'd add up, but I've got over $1,000 in that building, maybe even closer to $1,500. I've never actually added it up, but I've got a lot of money in that building. But you know, I went over to one of the big box ones. I'm not going to say which, and I noticed they had a 12 by 14, which is an odd size. The 14 part is, and they was like 6,350, something like that. And, you know, if you look at the small print, because it has windows and all that, it says, you know, without the extras, which means it wouldn't have the windows and everything. And then you got to add in tax and all this. You're looking at a $7,000 building to buy it from them. And, you know, I got, you know, like I say, even if we'll just say 1,500, may not be 1,500, but about 1,500 in it. But you got to remember, a lot of that was building the foundation and stuff like that, getting the, you know, the 6x6 16s and the blocks and all. And I've got extra blocks, by the way, that I'm going to use on my other building. I'm going to add some more foundation to it beyond what it had, and you know, stuff like that. So it adds up. It adds up real quick. Just that fascia stuff added up real quick. But at the end of the day, I've got a building that's got a solid foundation. You know, just rock solid. It's not going anywhere. And you know, it's got the walls are strong. It's, you know, it's got the OSB and it's got the sides, so it's, you know, it's just double layered there. And then the top has the really good supports up there. And I'm going to actually have some more supports coming across the ceiling area before it's over with. And then it's got the double braced part at the top, you know, holding everything screwed together. Then of course you had the OSB on the top of that. Then you had the 2x6s on the top of that, which is giving it strength out from the sides and all. Then you have the metal roof on top of that. Yeah, it's got all kinds of fallback systems in it, if you will. And it's got a regular metal door. Now, I kept thinking about going with a 36-inch door, but I kept thinking, well, trying to stay with the original stuff to show that it can be done. Because the guy, when I was taking it all apart, you know, there was a place in there, I don't remember where, but he's kind of like, you could tell he's like, this thing's never going to be put back together. And he didn't say that, but you could tell, you know, that's what he was thinking. Or at least that's the way it came across to me. And, you know, rightfully so. You know, usually if somebody goes through taking something, you know, well, come on, you know, And you really could, build it for, I don't know. I haven't done the math, but you could probably buy the stuff and build that building for $2,500 material wise. But like I say, it become more of a challenge. Now that's you building it, not somebody else building it. Now keep in mind, almost everything done on this building I did myself. So it took a long time because, like, if I was doing something on the roof, I had to build a support system to hold the metal or something while I was putting it on because I had nobody there to hold it. I almost did everything. I had a little help here and there, but almost none in the grand scheme of things. So even those big 16s, I did have help moving them, but I could have moved them by myself. It wouldn't have been fun. And I noticed people in the comments say, "Oh no, you couldn't." Well, yeah, you don't know me very well. Anyway, at the end of the day, I done most of it myself. And, I'm not a young man anymore. So point is, if I can do it, then you can do it. Get your friend to help you. Don't do it like I did. Get your friend to help you or two, and you'd be surprised at what you can do. And you don't have to build as good as that. A lot of people do 24 centers, and they don't have as strong of a floor and all. You don't need 6x6, runners under the bottom. Most of these buildings have a 4x6 and they cut down into it, whereas I sat it on top and then added some extra braces. But, that's overkill. But that's the way I do things. I've always been that way. And the thing is, when I do something, I don't have to go back and forth with it after that. This building's not complete. I've still got to do some sealing and stuff like that. So, but I mean, whenever I put something together, it typically don't break. That's the way I believe in it. Because yeah, you put a little extra money into it, but then you don't have to worry about it. So, thank you.